On Taco Bell's website, they claim to be the founder of the crunchy taco. The founder, Glen Bell, opened the first Taco Bell in 1962, and his original taco recipe took off and soon created a billion-dollar fast food chain. However, his taco recipe he used was completely stolen, and he never gave any credit to the original creators. So, who actually created Taco Bell's tacos? Today, we're diving into the whole story and uncovering how Glen Bell took advantage of another taco place and turned his restaurant into the most popular Mexican restaurant to ever exist. Glen Bell was born in Linwood, California. He graduated from San Bernardino High School in 1941 and then served in the U.S. Marine Corps as a cook during World War II. After the Marines, Glen took his first step into the fast food world after starting his first hot dog stand, Bell's Drive-In, in San Bernardino in 1948. 4 years later, in 1952, he sold the hot dog stand and built a second restaurant selling hamburgers and hot dogs, appropriately called Bell's Hamburgers and Hot Dogs. However, his business wasn't doing so hot because a restaurant in the same area called McDonald's, yes, that McDonald's, started to gain popularity fast for their burgers. He needed a way to distinguish himself from McDonald's, and this is where he first thought of the idea to sell tacos. He researched how to make tacos, eventually made his own unique recipe, and started selling tacos at 19 cents each. They were selling pretty well, but he knew that his expertise wasn't in tacos. He would use his burger sauce recipe on his tacos, which did make them a hit. But deep down, he knew his business wouldn't take off without a better recipe. He was out of luck. That is, until he infamously stole the recipe from a small Mexican restaurant across the street from his restaurant, the Mitla Cafe. The Mitla Cafe was opened in 1937, back when Glen was just a freshman in high school. The Mitla Cafe was more than just a place to get great Mexican food. It was a meeting place for the hundreds of Mexicans that lived on the west side of San Bernardino. See, 1937 was a tough year for minorities. Being on the heels of the Great Depression, as well as segregation still in place, it was hard for Mexicans to have a sense of community and peace. The Mitla Cafe was a place that cultured that sense of community for those minorities. Mexican families, athletes, and workers would all gather here to bond over great Mexican food. Mexican politicians would meet at the Mitla Cafe once a week to discuss neighborhood events and the politics of the community. It was essentially a home for these minorities, and because of that, lines were constantly out the door. And Glen took note of it. Glen was shocked at the amount of business the Mitla Cafe would bring in. He would see lines out the door every day and wonder why his restaurant wasn't having the same success. After visiting the Mitla Cafe, he eventually realized that their tacos were a huge hit with their customers. The tacos that the Mitla Cafe would serve consisted of a thinly fried tortilla shell lined with simple meats, shredded cheese, and diced tomatoes. The tacos were delicious, and better yet, the Mitla Cafe knew how to make them fast, way faster compared to the original way of making tacos. After noticing this, Glen knew he needed to know their secret. Glen started his investigation by ordering tacos from the Mitla Cafe and would bring them home to try to reverse engineer the process of making them. He would spend days trying to get the recipe down, but after failing, he took a completely different approach, stealing the recipe from the source. He'd visit the Mitla Cafe frequently and start to befriend the staff and family behind the restaurant. His smooth talking eventually worked, and he became friends with the owner, Salvador Oquendo. Salvador was more than happy to bring Glen back into his kitchen and show him the exact process of how they made their popular tacos. Glen learned everything about the process of making a Mitla Cafe taco, even down to each ingredient they would use. This was a huge revelation for Glen. After learning this process, he knew he would be taking over the fast food industry in no time. Glen was quick to close Bell's Hamburgers and Hot Dogs. He quickly became a part of a few partnerships that owned 2 new restaurants using his new taco recipe, Taco Tia and El Taco. Both restaurants were smashing hits and had multiple Southern California locations. However, after a dispute with his partners, he sold his stake in his previous restaurants and became the sole owner of his new restaurant, Taco Bell. He opened his first location in 1962 in a modest 20 by 20 foot building. With his entrepreneurial skills and of course his completely original taco recipe, he grew Taco Bell and had 868 locations by 1978. That year, he sold the rights of Taco Bell to Pepsi for a whopping $125 million. And even though he knew he completely ripped off the Mitla Cafe, he never once mentioned it to Pepsi or even in his own self-published biography. Thank you guys all so much for watching. Feel free to check out any of these videos and subscribe for more videos like this one. I love y'all, and I'll see y'all later.